Hello world. Well, today's a day that I'm actually making a video that I think I've been planning to make for, since 2008, 2009 already. That's when Boereprinses started. I must go and double check that because that's so long ago I've actually forgotten about it. And so much water has run into the sea since then. I've wanted to make a video for years, just never got around to it. You know how life happens, and we always find excuses for why we're not going to do it. Initially it was because I don't really know how to do videos, and long story short, it took me all this time until now, and then I started making videos of my spinning, which is another passion of mine besides being a Boer right to the core. Now, while I'm on that subject, this is going to be sort of just as an introductory to put on the Boereprinses YouTube channel that's been there, as I said, for decades. I'm a Boer. I used to have a Facebook group called Ek is 'n Boer en TROTS daarop. And I think I need to do a little bit of a chat on this kind of history, because people seem to have got no idea where it all came from, and my, shall I say, handle is Boereprinses. So they think, oh, I've got this air about me, which is not the case, not by a long shot. Why I chose Boereprinses was back in 2008 or so. My ex-husband sent me an article that he translated for somebody, and he wanted to make sure it's perfect because I was a translator at the time, on the Boers. Now, I don't know if he was trying to also sort of get a jab at me again as well, because this article made me see red. At that stage, I was living in Belgium, not because I left the country because I couldn't stomach all that was going on anymore. Quite the contrary, I thought if I'm in Belgium, I can actually tell people what's going on. I even got a certificate from Radio Pretoria because I was sort of their voice over there. Not that it helped much, because whenever you talk about the plight of us over here, I'm not going to use that other term that's been bandied around by the jingos lately. Farm murders, they sort of, no, you deserve it, you know, that kind of rubbish. Anyway, that's not what this is now right at this moment. It's about Boereprinses. So he sent me this article in which some vile person sort of spilled his vile guts about how horrible the Boers are now, platvloers and the commoners. You know the old story of how they got the Boers initially after the Boer War to sort of denounce their heritage and rather say they were Afrikaners because the Boers were supposed to be this dirty bunch who didn't bath, with reference to the women in the concentration camps that were supposed to be dirty and never bathing or whatever. Now, yeah, the nice thing is I grew up on this family farm where I still live. I had my great-grandmother who was locked up in the concentration camps, telling me stories from when I was very young about how they were locked up with a cup of water per person per day, no soap. So excuse me if they didn't bath. I mean, you're not going to bath in your 1 cup water that you have to drink or that you have to share with your children. Anyway, so I got so riled up by that article that I started that Facebook group, Ek is 'n Boer in capitals, and TROTS, still proud of it, in capitals as well. Specifically to say, you know, that other thing you can throw at people. And that's when I thought, aha, so if you're a Boer, you're considered one of those throwaway things on the rubbish dump. And it reminded me of a song that we as children used to play, and I can for the life of me not remember what it was. I'm going to search for it. I'm sure I'll find it. If maybe somebody can post it in the comments below. It was about this rag doll, the lapop, that was thrown away on the rubbish dump. She was crying big tears and everything because here she was between banana peels and socks without a mate, old shoes, bicycle tube full of patches, no longer working, you know, that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay. So I'm a Boer. I'm a young Boer lady at that stage. So I'm supposed to be one of these dirty, filthy things they made us out to be. Except that I know my heritage and I'm proud of it. So I said, okay, I'm the Boereprinses. You know, like the lapop princess on the rubbish dump that was thrown away. So that was sort of like a middle finger at all those people who called us names. Now, that Facebook group took off, and at one stage, eventually, it reached 7,500 members, people all over the world for that matter. And for those who didn't know that group, or because Facebook closed it, I'll get to that at some stage, maybe today, I don't know, I don't want to make this video too long. That Facebook group was all about telling people that we Boers are not the vile creatures we were made out to be, firstly. Secondly, that we have a deep belief in our Creator, that is God Almighty, the one that created everything in the universe, every person on earth. I'm not one of those that think I'm special because of this or that or the other. No, I'm just one of God's children. The way Jesus taught me as well. We are God's children. Anyway, so that basically a lot of people got to realize, but that is actually how it's supposed to be. I explained to people that the whole story about the homelands were not as bad as it was made out. The people were not locked up in small little parcels of land. I mean, for goodness sake, Mandela's piece of land was bigger than Netherlands. So definitely not a small place. And it was a beautiful country. So no, don't come and tell me that they were basically just locked up in small parcels of land. People need to get their facts straight. And that's exactly what I did. I shared the facts with everybody all over the world. I had members from Europe, America, even China. People wanted to know what it was all about. Then a bunch of people approached me. I'm not going to get involved in that. It's just like so the jingle bells. Trying to convince me that they will put me forward and make sure I get far in life and politics if I just make sure I don't say the wrong things and I say what they say I must say. And I say, excuse me, you must be crazy. I'm saying what I feel God put on my heart to say, and that's it. If you don't like it, well, go and find yourself another puppet. I'm not going to be one of those. That's why I hate politics. Long story short, the Facebook group was closed down. Every so often I would get somebody to say, oh, Maritje, leef jy nog? But I know that was sort of that stab to say, you better be careful, tread careful, or you're not going to end living for too long. And sometimes it was even more blatant. It's not good for your health to say this, that, and the other. So, in November 2015, I had 3 incidents, 2 of those being cars with burst hydraulic pipes a week apart. Third one when my daughter and myself went to fetch the last vehicle that was fixed. Somebody smashed in my window and then tried to cut my pulse on the broken window. My daughter jumped out and chased the bastard away because everybody in Silverton, I think it was Fakkel Road, was staring at what was going on here. 2 bloody lily-livered and slapgat, sorry, there's no other word for that, to do anything until this young girl jumped out and started chasing this guy away. Anyway, by then he ran away, so we drove off. I had to go and get help because I was rather badly cut. That was event number 3, week number 3. Week number 4, we were going down to the Cape to go and fetch alpacas because I'm a real farmer beside being a Boer. And I started farming with alpacas. It's a passion of mine. That's why I started making videos for Boereprinses alpacas, my other passion. Now, I never actually shared my personal movements on Facebook because I have had too many threads, and some of them were unfortunately too vocal because my daughter went down with some of my grandchildren and my son. On December 2005, 2015, the 5th of December 2015, just after 6 in the morning, just outside of Three Sisters, I was driving all the way from Pretoria to there, and we stopped at Three Sisters for a bit of a break about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then we continued just after 6, and I said to my son, okay, you must drive now because I'm dead on my feet. I cannot drive any further. So he took over, and about 20 minutes later we had an accident. The car just left the road 15 kilometers from Beaufort West. Luckily none of my kids got hurt. To this day I don't know how it happened that we stepped out of that alive. I made another video on it because it's so sort of traumatic when I think back of it again. I got out of it with a broken back, and prognosis was that I would probably not walk again. And luckily, my knee being me, if somebody tells me you're not going to do something, then I sort of, okay, I'll show you I can. So I'm walking again, just to set the record straight. That was, as I say, 2015. We're now 10 years later. It took me probably 8-9 years to sort of get back into the swing of getting my life normal again. I sort of turned my back on Facebook by then. The Facebook group Boer and TROTS was closed down a little bit before that already. I opened a new one and just parked it on Facebook because I also know how they would steal somebody's name or character or whatever, and you'll get all these false bots coming up. So I just wanted to make sure nobody's going to change that, because that group to me was about teaching people what a real Boer is like, not like these things we're going to fight and baklei and or whatever. I still wanted people to know what's going on, but I just thought it's not the time. I left it at that then, especially when one of my granddaughters died in August of 2016. Yeah, so I sort of drip feed every now and then. I would mention something on Facebook, but it wasn't really something I wanted to do much about. And sort of from the beginning of the year, I started feeling like I can get, end of last year probably, saying a little bit more, because there's this little voice in me that kept on saying, you know, it's time, it's time, it's time. Then during the week, I was thinking of, okay, I must make this first video. It's time. Because I made 5 or 6 other videos on the Boereprinses alpaca group already. And then came this whole charade with Ramaphosa going over to the US. That was actually one of the things when Trump was elected again and his inauguration, and since January things started changing again. I don't know how many people have realized by now that the two factions fighting for Earth, Satan and the good guys, are really heating up badly. And this whole thing of suddenly the Afrikaners being brought in the limelight and certain people stepping forward and having to do this, that and the other, there's much more behind that, and I think it's not really good for us Boers, where our heritage that have already been stolen is now actually pushed even more. I will start a little bit because I'm not interested in starting fights or anything. I just want to make sure people get the real history. And because I was lucky enough to grow up on a farm, this same farm has been in our family since before the Boer War. We even had an area here that my great-grandfather called the low scum, because the English, when they packed up my great-grandmother to the concentration camps and they burned everything down, they made their encampment there because it was quite high ground and they could see very far. And needless to say, my grandfather didn't have a good word for them. He was one of the Boers at the time that was roaming and fighting them. I grew up, I never met my great-grandfather, he passed away by then, but you know, in our days there was no such thing as TVs and telephones and Facebook or whatever. So when people were sitting around the table having their coffee and biscuit, there would be discussions about this, that and the other. Senior was a friend of my great-grandfather. You know, interesting things that as a little girl I basically just like a piece of rag or sponge, I just absorbed it all. To me it was so interesting. You know, if you grow up in an area with a history, then when school books are changed to change your history, you immediately see it and you don't fall for the rubbish, because I know firsthand what happened. And I see around me how people are totally lost. They have got no idea what happened. They believe all this rubbish. Now, I'm going to, hit against some hornet's nest here, because it's probably going to start some more complaints and fights and whatever. My great-grandparents and even my grandparents, they spoke Dutch. They didn't speak Afrikaans. Afrikaans is a creation by the Afrikaner, first the Broederbond and then the Afrikaner Broederbond, because they wanted to bring in their angle, and then eventually they become the Afrikaner Bond. So the term Afrikaner had no good connotations for us. We know that those who didn't fight with the Boers, and I mean there was a lot of them, mostly Cape Dutch, who fought against the Boers because they wanted the gold and the diamonds. Those called themselves Afrikaners, and they are the ones that started the story about, a Boer, nobody wants to be a Boer because they're these dirty, filthy, and this, that, and the other. So the ones who called themselves Afrikaners were drinking with a tea with a pinky in the air, and they were just speaking English. And by the way, I'm speaking English here not because I think I'm Lani or anything, but because I want to make sure that everybody understands what I'm saying. I mean, the average Boer knows, they understand English, but most other people don't understand Afrikaans, so I'm not going to speak Afrikaans. I'm making sure people understand what I'm saying here. Anyway, so just in case somebody don't know, when you might have heard the story about, Afrikaner was a name used by the Afrikaners themselves. The first person to use the term Afrikaner was some filthy Cape Dutch, I can only say Goga, that was caught in bed in one of the black or Bantu statte, where he was sleeping with one of the girls there, because he had an itchy crotch, and there were probably no sort of white ladies who wanted to go and lie down with this filthy little piece of rubbish. And when he was arrested by the British, by the way, the ones imposing the apartheid laws, not the Boers, when he was arrested, he said to them, "But ek ben een Afrikaner. I'm just the same as all these people. Why do you do this?" Okay, so fine, he's an Afrikaner. Fine, I'm a Boer. And I will rest my case there. I firmly believe South Africa needs to go back to the homeland system. Every nation, every nationality, and every ethnic group, and the Boers are a full-blown ethnic group in South Africa. We all need or deserve to be given our original pieces of land back. The problem is, the Boers, our area, holds gold and diamonds. And the British Crown have always lusted after that. The Afrikaner Bond is a creation from Cape Town from more than a century ago, and I mean the Broederbond probably go back all the way to Jan van Riebeeck's days. They have always lusted after the money. So the term Afrikaner, the creation of Afrikaans, all those things to me falls under Satan. So sorry, that is just the way I see it. And if you spend a whole day with me, I can explain it to you in so much more detail, but you're not really going to find much of that in the going day-to-day information search on internet, because everything's been scrubbed and we are taught all this rubbish that they want you to know. The ANC is a creation that was set up by them. I mean, the whole sort of apartheid struggle, it was set up by them, because they first tried it in the war, and our young boys and our decent guys in the South African army at that stage, they were not going to bend over backwards and allow these Bliksens to just walk in and take over our country. So they decided another angle, and they started with all this nonsense that was told to everybody across the world, false news, and of course with all these fake news newspapers that sell themselves off as the mainstream, or shall I say the lamestream. They were convincing everybody around the world the poor blacks were treated so badly, apartheid, because they had to carry passbooks. And they were locked up in these small little areas, and everybody just gobbled it up and believed it. As I say, Mandela, who was supposed to represent everybody, because they were first convinced they should forget about them being Xhosa or Venda or Sotho or whatever. They must just be black, because these blacks are, whites are against the blacks. And they fell for it. I mean, this was such a carefully coordinated propaganda approach. It was a machine. So they all fell for that, and they eventually gave up their homelands and everything, thinking life was going to be much better. What they didn't realize, and you can actually go and see, as far as I'm not sure what the year was, Venda also went to UNPO and was registered as a oppressed nation, because they lost their homeland and their self-governance, everything all the black nations had under supposedly apartheid. Yeah, all of them by now know what they've lost. We Boers, we want our normal areas back. The Afrikaners are mainly the Cape Dutch, and I can write a book on that on a separate occasion if need be. Oranje is an Afrikaner settlement by all means, and they're welcome to that. They must just not try and infiltrate the Free State and sort of get them to go for an afstichting, because they are all Afrikaner areas. Because that would mean the Boers in the Free State have really lost their mind. They've lost their shall I use the word? They've lost their balls. It's time to call a spade, I guess. We have to draw the line and say, that's enough now. Leave us alone. Give us back our property. Get the hell out of here. Go and do your own thing. Afrikaners, go and take Sea Point, because that's what's basically one of the other prime prizes that the US wants at this stage. And I'd rather the US go and take it than China. But leave the Free State and Transvaal the hell alone. It's our area. And it's not about, oh, we're going to make a lot of money out of the gold and diamonds. Good grief, that's the other thing people do not understand about the Boers. Boers are freedom lovers. We do not want to be governed by a bunch of politicians with a prize on their head. Well, a prize on their head and a price in their pocket. Because those politicians just want money. Boers don't want it. That's why our forefathers have basically packed their bags over and over again and moved away from different countries until eventually we reached South Africa, and with a groot trek we moved away from the English again to where we are now. We can't move anywhere else. We are at the end of it. And no, Boers do not want to go to America. A real Boer wants to stay in his country, on his land. The earth is part of us, and most Boers, by the way, are actually farmers, because we cannot survive in the cities. I managed to survive in Europe and Belgium for 5 years, and it was not fun. I couldn't handle those winter days, no sun, etc. But most of all, I couldn't handle being away from this farm where I grew up. It's in my soul, it's in my body. My neighbor across the river quite a few, 2-3 decades ago, tried to convince me to tell my dad to sell the land to him. And I said to him, "You're crazy." I actually set the dog on him because he sent his son-in-law to come and try and convince me, thinking that since he's one of the richest guys, I'm not going to mention names, but he's sort of in the same league as that one that went to America to go and try and convince Trump that it's more important to get the Cape Flats sorted out. Anyway, I said to him, "Get your feet off my land. You cannot buy my kidneys. This land is like my kidneys. There's no price. You cannot pay for it. It is my heritage. It's been in our family since 1869. So no, leave it." Most Boers feel like that. And unfortunately, we've been forced on our knees, left, right, and center. So many Boers eventually had to give up their farms. And they were bought up by these big corporations. Those corporations now boast being Afrikaners, you know, because they're part of that elite that was sort of carefully created. No, I just want things to go back to normal again, and for them all to bugger up. I wish I could get rid of all the diamonds and all the gold and just sort of beam it out, Scotty, take it elsewhere and just leave us alone. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen for quite a while. Anyway, I think this video has been probably long enough to really give a bit of a background. Oh, I suppose I better say, I was supposed to make this video a bit early and I kept on pushing it off. And then on the 21st of May, that day when our dear president made his name moron there in the US, I got attacked by my farm. Now, I'm not trying to be nasty or anything here. It's not really as a joke. I suppose I could go and walk into the US embassy and say, see, I need to go to America, but that's definitely not what I want to do. Anyway, I kept on putting off making this video, and then I suppose my Heavenly Father decided this time is going to bring me back to earth, quite literally. So I tripped, I fell, and I knocked my head bang on. I'll still have a bit of blue eye here and whatever, and some marks here, but I waited a few days for that to get better. Anyway, I didn't look too good with all the blood streaming down my face. I had an excuse then to put it off, to not make the video, and then this morning I kept on having this feeling, I better go and make a milk tart now, and to the point of saying to this little voice in my head, "Man, bugger off now." And then it hit me with a broomstick. When I was very young, I always had this habit on a Sunday. If I started making a milk tart, my mom knew one of her sisters, a sister or one of her brothers would come for a visit, and she would say to me, "Oh, who's coming for the visit today?" And I said, "I don't know, I just know they're coming." So I always had this, because I was born with a second sight or whatever. I see things happening, and it's not a funny thing to have because there's no date with it. But usually things happen, and it's not nice seeing flashes of things happening. But anyway, I kept on getting this message, go and make a milk tart, and I would say, "But there's nobody coming. I'm living on the farm here, all by my lonesome self and my kids next door, with gates locked, and another farm that you have to drive through to go there. So, and I can't see anybody coming for a visit." And then it is as if somebody sort of smacked me against the head and said, "No, it's not that. It means the time has come." So I decided to make this video. I don't have a choice. So take it, like it or not. Now I've made the video. Now I can feel better about it. And with time, maybe I'll make more videos. But I think it's important for this one to go and park there on the Boereprinses site. And I'll see how it goes. But I must say there are many days when I feel like I have to say something, and because I hate crowds, I don't like to go out, and I'm not interested in politics, so please leave me alone. Okay, for the record, there's two things that I hate with a passion. One being politics. The second one investments. If one person on Facebook approached me again trying to sell investments to me, I'm probably going to say something nasty, because it really wants me to feel like vomiting. Because the reason this country, the whole world for that matter, is in the situation we are is because of investments, because that is what causes inflation. That is what causes people to lose their businesses and their inventions and everything. But this is too much for me to talk about now. I think I will speak more about that. But for now, I think I'm going to sit and spin a little bit, because I've worked myself up too much now and it's not good for my health. Anyway, now you know who I am. I'm going to face my Boereprinses picture has been going there since 2005, so it's 20 years old. Yeah, I'm an old tannie. I'm not that young chick anymore. But I will leave that picture because it's associated with the old original ex-Boer TROTS staff and the message that was started then already. We Boers are not into politics. We are not into racial hatred. In fact, I promote, and I know most of the people that are really Boers at heart are people that are close to our Heavenly Father. We are not falling for all this rubbish that are sold after you in organized churches and the government and things like that. We have a close bond with our Creator, and we know that He created everybody, and everybody has a right to be who they are. They do not have a right to oppress anyone. Finish and clear. That's why the National Party and their apartheid regime had nothing to do with the Boers. Not at all. Remember, there was a fight, a huge war at the beginning of the previous century, when the Boers lost everything. And the ones that stepped in afterwards, supposedly put in the driver's seat by the English, and that was supposed to be Boer generals, were not Boers. They were Afrikaners. And the one person besides Mandela that I have the least respect for, in fact, I hate him with a passion. It's not a good thing to hate anyone because it's not good for your soul, is Jan Smuts, because he was the biggest sellout ever in this country. I grew up in a family where the people loathed his name. Unfortunately, I carry that surname as well, but I do not carry his beliefs. The fact that he turned out to be Britain's most important general should have had people realizing there was something seriously wrong about that. He was the white Mandela, or Mandela was the black Jan Smuts, selling out this country, gobbling up the gold. I think I have said enough. For those who do not know me, I am known as Boereprinses on Facebook. Well, mainly on YouTube actually. On Facebook I use my own name, Mariki Smuts. That's it. Maybe I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.